Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeaux. We are the founders of JRNI Coaching.
We're super passionate about all things coaching and want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training over 1,000 life coaches.
Dive deep into a more meaningful career, find freedom, and make an impact on the world around you.
Hey folks, today we're going to talk about the 3-point framework for flourishing. Noelle, good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, I like how you are singy-songy today.
I know, and I don't have my sound effects, and so I have to do them myself.
Oh, nice. You sound happy. That's good.
I'm happy. Are you happy?
I'm happy. And as I just took a sip of coffee, cold coffee, it reminded me, I got an email and someone said, we love you, but can you please, and please don't take this the wrong way, can you please not slurp when you're doing audio stuff? And at first I was like, wait a minute, I could do whatever I want, ego. And then I was like, you know what? When we are talking, we are intimate. A lot of people put on headphones and we're intimately in someone's ear, which is very different than watching a video. And so I was like, oh yeah, I should be respectful and not slurp and stuff like that. So
Okay, well, here
just
we
a
go
note.
then.
Yeah.
I think that's a great note. And let's see if we can segue us into our topic today, which
Yeah.
is a 3-point framework for flourishing. And I think we can use coffee and enjoyment of coffee as a theme here. So let's stay with that for a little bit.
Yes, and both you and I are coffee drinkers.
Yes, we are. So when you take the time to either go purchase or make yourself a really nice cup of coffee, what does that do for you? How do you experience it?
It's my morning wake up. It's my and I'm a little bit of a coffee snob. I purchase and I buy the expensive pour over stuff, and it wakes me up and gives me it gives me the green light to start my day.
I do the same. I've kind of ritualized it where I have one cup of coffee when I first wake up just to get moving. And then before I sit down to work, I make a second one. And that signals kind of entering a new space for me. So, according to what we're going to talk about today, what we are both describing is a ritualized aspect of our day that involves contentment. And it's part of our 3-point framework of flourishing.
Mm. So yeah, and let's talk. Let's just real quick. What are the 3 points? One's contentment.
Yep. The other is achievement,
Hmm.
and then the other is hedonic.
So is the idea that these are kind of the legs of the table? If the table was flourishing, you need these 3 things.
Yes, and it's a little bit more specific than flourishing in general, because flourishing in general could be like a butterfly that goes in all sorts of different directions and zigs and zags. And what we're talking about with this 3-point framework is a really simple way of looking at sustained and sustainable aspects of flourishing, which is a little bit of a different cut than things that bring us pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure can feel plastic. Pleasure can be temporary. To me, when you say flourishing, I think of thriving. I think of running toward our true north. I think of meaning. I think of evolution.
Yes, and thriving is a great word. So let's juxtapose that up against the term happiness and the way that social construct fits in, as far as, it's what I typically refer to as the Coke commercial of life,
Right.
right? That there's this idea, especially in America, of American happiness. And so many people fall prey to this idea, and this idea of your life as a snapshot, your life as a moment, your life as one thing that will signal to you or other people that you are happy, you have made it, you have arrived, is called impact
Mm.
bias.
Yeah, and also living in LA, it's maybe it's a kombucha. snapshot
It
instead of the
could be.
Coke.
Yeah, it could be the kombucha snapshot, but what this is, impact bias, is the tendency of people based on societal norms around achievement and pleasure to overestimate the initial impact and duration of any singular event that has any kind of emotion or esteem attached to it.
Okay, you have to say that in English. I don't. Those words are too big for me. So when you say overestimate the initial impact and the duration of the emotional event, what does that mean? Street level.
Yeah, street level. So, overestimate, right? So we're thinking into the
Mm,
future, so that we're not living and existing or thriving in our present. We're not looking at the day-to-day moments, like brewing a nice cup of coffee or snuggling
right.
your kid or just checking in, how do I feel today? But we're holding in our heads certain future events, like buying a new car, getting a house, getting married, passing an exam, graduating from a certain institution, that these things are either social check boxes or personal check boxes, and that when you arrive at this state, which is a transitional, temporary state, all of a sudden you will then have the stamp of
Yes, this is one
happiness.
of the things struggle with the most. I'm much better at it today than I was a decade ago, but it's putting your life on pause until that thing comes. And then when that thing comes, then you could hit play again. But for most, that thing never comes. So your life is basically on pause.
Absolutely. Or the thing does come, but the level of increased happiness that you feel at the completion of that cycle only lasts about 3 months.
Yeah. And then you put your life on pause until the next thing.
Exactly. Do I
Right.
have your permission to fox with you a little bit on this based
Yeah.
on what I know and love of you?
Wait, did you say Fox?
Yes.
What is that? I've never heard that before. Fox with me.
It's fox with me. It's like boxing with you, but
Mm.
foxing with you.
Wow, I learned a new word today. Okay,
There you
fox with
go.
me. What's
Fox with
fox?
you. Let's
Yeah.
do it. All right. So talk to me about cars and houses.
Yes, I live in Los Angeles.
Yes, and and
They
and
mean
and
something.
they mean something, and you love cars, right? Like you absolutely love cars.
Yeah, I love
Um,
machines. I'm a gearhead, but when you live in LA, the $100,000 car in Los Angeles is just kind of like the Honda. It's it's not a big deal. And so growing up in LA, being a gearhead, just being exposed to all the sports cars and all the fancy cars that you see here.
I mean, all of this is bananas to me, but we're going to go with
Right.
it. And then, thinking about a house, I know that purchasing a home for you was a milestone in your life.
Yeah, yeah, it had a lot of meaning and it was a big deal. Just renting in apartments most of my life, and I bought a condo once in K Town, and it's funny because my dad said, "You're just buying air. You're wasting your money. You're not buying any land." But yes, finally purchasing a little ranch style house up in Altadena, it meant something to me.
Okay. And while you and I have been in each other's lives, there have been many kinds of vehicles that have come and gone.
Yes, yeah, motorcycles, cars.
And I know that, throughout these chapters of condos and cars and houses, you've really deeply struggled with meaning, with happiness, with peace, with joy, with relationships that are connected. Um, it- am I right? Am I wrong? How close am I?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
I think I used to put a lot of weight on material objects, aesthetics, stuff like that.
So thinking about the house, right? 3 months has now passed since you purchased the house.
Hmm.
Have you retained an elevated sense of happiness? Or have you experienced maybe, all right, this is cool, and now I'm looking towards the next?
Yes, this is cool. I mean, I have, of course, moments of gratitude, but yes, this is cool. Now I want a swimming pool. Now I just keep throwing money into it. Let's build a better bathroom, and can we buy another house? Yeah, of course. It's that stuff that keeps
Yeah.
coming. Yeah.
So this is normal. And I want to highlight that this is absolutely 100% normal. In the literature, this is called hedonic adaptation.
Mm,
And this is how humans get stuck in the hamster wheel of life because we live in a capitalistic society that constantly gives us commercials of things that we don't have and scripts based on where you live that run through your head around what you should have, what others have. And then the moment that you get something, it's really, really, really absolutely wonderful, and then give it 3 months and you're going to want something new.
yeah, absolutely. I do want to give myself a little credit. I do have proof. I'm gonna wave this like a kid who got an A on his report card. Uh, I just went to Vegas, and speaking of hedonic, because I live close to Vegas, I've been to Vegas many times growing up in LA, and usually it tugs on all of my, I don't know, vices. I'm sitting at the table, I'm gambling, I'm doing, I'm not going crazy, but there's debauchery there. And this last trip, although it was a work trip, it was the first time in my life where I had zero desire to gamble, zero desire to go out, to part. All I did was sit in a hotel room and did some work, play with my phone, and ate. And so I thought that was a good sign that I'm not hitting pause on my life and chasing after that anything that feels good.
That's awesome. I'm super proud of you. And we can validate and give cookies and A plus on that report card. 100%. So, what John's describing and where we're at with this idea of hedonic adaptation is that when we begin to notice it and say, "Oh, every time I go to Vegas, I want to play with things because it's shiny stuff, really
Hmm.
cool things." Where this view misses the ball, the next car, the next house, the next job, the next degree, is we start checking the boxes off of our life and we don't take the opportunity to look at how we feel while we're living.
Mm,
What we do instead is we construct a show and tell to set up conditions that represent a life, but the experience of a life is something different altogether.
how do you think we exercise and strengthen that muscle? Is it through being present and meditating and dropping into our body? I mean, I guess everyone has a different way of doing it.
It could be, and you're right. Everyone does have a different way of doing it, but this is where we come back to that 3 point framework because being in Vegas and having fun is important and wonderful. Working on your life from an achievement perspective is wonderful. And
Hmm.
so is taking the time to have that cup of coffee in the morning and settle into your day. And so there are lots of really wonderful positive psychology frameworks out there, but I like this particular one because of its absolute simplicity.
Yeah, absolutely. I love simple, straightforward things, and this is one of them.
This is. It comes to us from Kate Heffron, who runs the Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of East London. And Heffron's really interesting to me because she began her work in positive psychology by studying our bodies and how we connect to our living bodies through sensation. And so when she started and enters the reader into this framework, she talks about achievement and how achievement manifests in our body and how society is so very oriented towards achievement, both physical and mental.
Mm,
So most people spend most of their time striving and chasing in the achievement category. And there's some important things to know as we truck down this path is number one, if you're living in achievement, it's physically impossible to be where you need to be, which is around 80% at both physical and mental. So you have to choose one in order to live in balance.
right.
You can't do 80% physical and 80% mental at the same time. And then looking kind of at the other end of the spectrum is hedonic. And depending on what your own personal value system is, based on where you grew up and your family of origin and the values of the culture that surrounds you, everyone is going to have a really different and perhaps difficult relationship with pleasure.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you grew up in LA, it's very different than say if you live in Africa, your definition of pleasure.
Or Iowa,
Yeah.
or Ohio, or Maine, or South Carolina, and depending on maybe the level of religiosity where you are permitted to experience pleasure. Is it in food? Is it in sex? Is it in drugs? Is it in music? Is it in dancing? Where does pleasure come from? And pulling back, we live in a society in the US that was formed by puritanical thought, where pleasure is looked at this thing that we all want, and we're all a little bit scared of it at the same
Hmm.
time. Yeah. So when we're working with clients in this way, we need to start getting in touch with the different frames that might sit on the edges of achievement and pleasure, and say, okay, is there any unhealthy thinking around these two edges that we need to contend with? How do we need to reframe our relationship with achievement and pleasure?
What's interesting is a third achievement, a third contentment, a third hedonic. If I look at these three, growing up, it wasn't balanced like this. So I think hedonic was very high. It's more than a third. Um, Achievement might have been lower, and I don't know where contentment was, but I love this idea that. Like an equalizer, you play with these three things until there's more of a balance, and that's what's gonna equal thriving and flourishing. And if these are unbalanced, then your life can be unbalanced in a way.
If these three things are unbalanced, any aspect of thriving that you achieve will not be sustainable.
Right. So it'll be a short ride, you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so step one is kind of evaluating, all right, where are we at with these three things? And then step two is sourcing our client's relationship with each of the categories. Typically, when we use this framework in coaching, contentment is left out entirely as something that is important to cultivate in Western society. In Eastern society, it's very different.
Right.
um, Contentment is a big part of everyday life, and that's beautiful and important. So understanding where your client comes from a cultural perspective is important. And then also, this is pretty common sense. If you spend all of your time chasing pleasure, of course your life is going to be out of balance.
Yeah.
If you spend all of your time chasing contentment, that's not good either. And then achievement is objectively killing us as a society.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love this.
Yeah. So there we go. It's a pretty quick and dirty framework. It's a great way to orient your client. And just to review, what do we need to know? We need to know that hedonic adaptation is real. We need to know that in America, at least, most people are seeking the check boxes, whether it's a relationship, a house, a car, a degree, a certain level of salary, and that the way to undo it is to pull out these foundational concepts and figure out our relationship with them and really get in there, to kind of draw out dysfunctional thinking and then bring to the fore what health looks like in each of these arenas.
Yeah. Well, we hope you found this episode helpful, and take a moment and think about achievement, contentment, and hedonic in your life, and the role that they play, and how much weight you're putting into each one, and what it would look like for them to balance out so they're a third each, and play with that, and what that looks like in action, behavior, thought, and you can set yourself up to flourish, and make that flourishing sustainable.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And come
Yeah.
see us at JRNI Coaching if you want to play in the sandbox with these items. That's one of the things that having community does for you, is it gives you permission to deepen your relationship with all three: achievement, contentment, and pleasure in a healthy and meaningful way.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Be well. Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to journey.co/everything to explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a strong community to do it in. We created JRNI Coaching to equip you with the tools, training, and community you need to attain your goals.
Join JRNI Coaching and begin your journey towards personal freedom and a transformative state of growth today. That's JRNI.co/everything.